Hello, Szara here with another conversation for the sake of ourselves. It's actually a bit of a continuation of the last conversation we just had about what does it look like to have a great, fantastic relationship with yourself, or how are you a promise to treat yourself? Taking on that conversation, I ongoingly say it's one of the most crucial foundational conversations that you can create for yourself. It's the most foundational relationship you're ever going to have with anybody ever, is the relationship you have with yourself. And the relationship you have with yourself really does set the tone for the relationships you have available then with other people. It kind of sets the bandwidth and playground of the kind of way you show up in relationship, starting with the relationship we have with ourselves. But one of the biggest, most critical reasons I invite people into having a really great, reverent, fantastic, beautiful, sacred relationship with yourself is, the mechanics of that. It really allows you to be with yourself. Often we resist seeing parts of ourselves. We like to notice the good parts of ourselves and the great parts of ourselves, which is actually really important. High five, keep noticing all your greatness and acknowledge all the great things you're up to. But often we can skirt around or get very uncomfortable or not even know how to be with the not so great parts of ourselves, and part of the nature of being a human is we are a spectrum of ways of being. We have all kinds of patterns and behaviors and beliefs and opinions and ways of operating and ways of being. And a lot of that comes from our past. A lot of it comes from our childhood. A lot of it comes from, protecting ourselves or, making sure we're safe. And it can get very reactional. Often if we're really out to grow, if we're really out to be the biggest version of ourselves, if we're out to really have flourishing relationships, it does require being able to shine a spotlight over on ourselves and over on all the parts of ourselves. I don't know about you, but, often if you're in a relationship, and that can be any kind of relationship, a parental child relationship, a friendship relationship, a more intimate partner relationship, whatever kind of relationship, you are in and whatever kind of role you are in that relationship, often, those people around us might trigger us, might activate us, might send us into a tailspin, and sometimes not even so dramatically, that we'll just, have certain ways of being and showing up around certain kinds of conversations. And a lot of it is subconscious. A lot of it we're not aware of. A lot of it is just kind of queued up and default. Somebody says X, Y, and Z and press play because there's the reaction that comes from that person saying such things. So we often kind of have these already ways of showing up to conversations, to our relationships, and to the people around us. And it can be pretty tricky. We all have our own way of responding to it and reacting to it. But when we take a look at ourselves and actually take a look in the mirror of, how am I behaving? How am I reacting here? Is this how I'm committed to reacting? Is this how I would like somebody to react or behave with me? Sometimes we can feel pretty helpless in how we show up and how we react and what our patterns are and our behaviors are. And when we tend a great relationship with ourselves, when we say, for me, it's I got my back and I'm my best friend, it's not to say, my best friend wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you're already right. You're always right, sister. Oh yeah, you rock it. No, if I'm being a crappy human, if I'm being kind of stuck in a loop or a certain behavior or pattern, I would hope and I would trust and I would ask my best dear friend to say to me, hey, Szara, I know you might not be committed to the way you're acting right now, but the way you're acting is kind of crappy. The way you're showing up is kind of crappy. Who you're being or how you're talking or your tone or, just the kinds of things you're saying is kind of crappy. And, is that what you want? Is that what you're actually out to be? And have me pause and say, hey, you might want to take a look. I actually say most of our pattern behaviors and anything that's happened in our reactions, they're not necessarily need to be deemed negative. It only becomes kind of negative when we're not willing to take a look at it and just keep repeating it on this kind of repeat spin cycle and never really adjusting or altering or tackling it to learn and grow from whatever that pattern and behavior is. Like, that's when it becomes a little bit grimy, a little bit, ooh, we don't want that. And this is where, having a really fantastic relationship with ourselves, I would think would include some compassion, curiosity, and some kindness and lovingness, where we can be like, okay, I'm having some crappy behavior. Oh, I don't like that. I might be embarrassed by that. I might have some shame around that. I might not want to be seen that way. Being seen for our not great parts of ourselves could be really threatening to our very existence. We're a species that is really built on belonging and connection. And, if people see the, ugly parts of ourselves, will we belong? Will we still, be connected? Will we still be included into, the group? And so, it's understandable that we are going to resist seeing those parts of ourselves. We are going to resist admitting kind of those parts of ourselves. We are going to, skirt over the impact or how we might actually be showing up to ourselves and those around us. So it is very understandable. It's very normal. It's very, nothing's really wrong with it in nature that, you might have a pattern of behavior or a way of being or a way of interacting or something that happens that, isn't what you're committed to and isn't really great or isn't really helpful or serving of you and what you're up to. And this is kind of where one of the big importances of tending a really great relationship with ourselves, it kind of gives us like arms around holding space to admit things to ourselves. And you don't have to go admit it to other people if you don't want, but at least admit things to yourself. If I am my got my back best friend, let me please at least admit to myself, wow, I was just really crappy there. I don't really like how I got upset. I don't really like the words that I used. I wasn't really liking that person was left in a certain way. I wasn't really liking that. And if I can actually admit that, I have something to work with. Whereas what happens, generally speaking, is we don't admit those things. We're not willing to be with those parts of ourselves. We resist those parts of ourselves. We push them away. We skirt over them. We avoid them. We minimize them. We push them to the wayside, or just kind of numb ourselves out of justify it. You can justify it and just say, oh, well, no big deal. No big deal. Everybody's that way. Everybody gets like that. And we can do that, hey, you can do that and you can keep going on and you can still live a happy life. You can still actually have a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment. You can still have a lot of great things that happen in your life. But you're not going to really impact or influence ever altering that. You're going to kind of stay stuck and trapped in kind of a pattern of behavior that's on that loop and repeat cycle. And so taking a chance to see and admit and take a look, and what I like to call be observationally aware of how we're interacting with ourselves and the people around us and how we're behaving and what's driving our behavior and what's driving how we show up. Asking yourself those kind of questions actually give you a fighting chance to impact and influence how you are showing up and who you are being and how the environment around you works. And in the end, truthfully, I don't know about you, but when you show up in a kind of crappy way or a not great way, you don't usually feel really great about yourself. You usually kind of feel pretty crappy about yourself. And, you can push it to the background and just be like, oh, I'm fine. But you know what? It's still in the background. You still have a certain way you're going to relate to yourself. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm kind of a grumpy jerk. Or, oh, yeah, sometimes I can be a bit biatchy. Oh, yeah, well, that person, when they said that, they did that. Well, it's no wonder I did that. But you know what? There's going to be another person in front that's going to do the same things and poke those same buttons and have that same reaction and response show up. So, it doesn't, we can go on like that, but we're then kind of continually repeating this cycle of putting a certain kind of energy and way of being out there and keeping, a certain level or limit or lid on what's possible in our own life. So I find taking on a really great, fantastic, reverent, sacred relationship with yourself is crucial and important and really makes a difference for having your back to expand and grow, having your back to be the great human that would actually have you feel kind of fantastic about yourself. The moment you actually admit, hey, that was kind of crappy. I'm not committed to actually show up like that. I don't know how not to be. I feel kind of stuck. I feel kind of helpless in being that or doing that or saying that. But again, as my best friend, who would I be for myself? Well, maybe I'd be somebody who would start reading about that. Hey, Google can be great for just typing in anything. I was just a jerk to somebody and that didn't feel good. What should I do? Start there. You can Google all kinds of crazy questions. It's kind of fun. Talk about it to some friend. Look to see what kind of things would be supportive tools or resources. But it really does start with first creating a great relationship with ourselves so that we can have a safe space for ourselves. So we are creating ourselves as a safe space to be with ourselves and explore ourselves, to learn and discern ourselves, to grow ourselves, to admit to ourselves so that we can influence and impact ourselves to be the kind of human, to be the kind of person that not that other people want us to show up as, but for you, who you want to show up as. When you close your eyes at night, you either feel great about yourself or you don't. And, you can numb it away. You can pretend it's not there. But bottom line, there you are. There you are with yourself. How do you feel about yourself? How do you know yourself? How do you like yourself? And it's not something that you can just put a happy face sticker on and say, oh my gosh, I love myself. I'm so great. You can do affirmations, you can do mirror work. There are different things that you can do to focus on really loving yourself. But if you are not honestly giving yourself the space to admit to yourself who you are and how you show up as, you're not going to get a chance to influence yourself and impact yourself. So this is where, before you go to just take a look at yourself and be observationally aware of yourself, that can be hard work. That can be a lot. It can be a bit overwhelming to sometimes see the amount of patterns and behaviors that we can get, looped into. And, it can be daunting. It can be overwhelming. It can be, it can be quite an obstacle and a mountaintop or a mountain to, face, to take a look wow. If you see all of yourself and you see parts of yourself that you don't like, it can be a lot to be with, so a great way to be with yourself is to be loving, to be compassionate, to be curious, to have some understanding so that you can be on your own team and not against yourself. You can be on your own side. You can be on your own team to work with yourself, to hold yourself, to be compassionate with yourself, but to influence and impact yourself. So, I really wanted to add that in about the relationship with yourself and why it's so important is building and tending and cultivating a great relationship with yourself isn't just great for all kinds of other reasons like your health, your wellness, and your relationships around you. It also gives you a teammate for life so that you can grow yourself, so you can be a safe space to admit some of the not so great parts that, we're human and are there. But the more often we can admit those things to ourselves lovingly and kindly and with arms around support, the more bandwidth and strength we have to actually honestly tackle it and take it on and impact it and have new ways of being and new patterns of behavior and just new ways to relate to ourselves. And then it just grows your relationship with yourself. So the more you tend your relationship with yourself and the more you take on those parts of yourself or pattern behaviors, the more you feel great about yourself, the more you start trusting yourself, the more you realize, wow, I actually have a say in the kind of human I am. I actually have a say in the kind of person I am and how I show up to the people around me. And again, none of this is for what other people want of you. It's not to perform. It's not to show up in the right way or the morally correct way or the way, your parents would be proud or society would be proud. No, this is to show up in the way that's true to you and true to your heart and has you feel good about yourself and has you feel great and has you feel, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm showing up to myself and my life in a way that has me feel great about myself and great about what I'm capable of and great about what's possible for me. And again, it's not about reaching for any perfection, because you can try. Good luck. I don't know if you find the secret formula. Please email it to me. We're not perfect beings. And I really actually think it's not in our nature to be. And there's a lot of learning and growth available in not being perfect. We get to be with the whole spectrum of humanity. And, within each of us lives every aspect of humanity, is my belief. Like every little bit of possible bit of humanity lives somewhere within you. And whether you are having it at the forefront or whether it's in the background, there's a spot you can relate from and understand from. And, I think there's a lot of learning and growth to sit with all the areas of ourselves, sit with all the layers of ourselves, sit with all the ways we can show up and the ways we can be, and especially those ones that aren't pretty. But don't sit with yourself alone with the not pretty ones and the ugly ones or the shadowy ones or the dark ones. Sit with yourself as your best friend. Sit with yourself with compassion, with love, with understanding, with arms around holding yourself, with care and regard and kindness, knowing that, this isn't bad. This is actually kind of normal. And it's now who you choose to be with these parts with yourself. Everybody actually has these parts of ourselves. It's really, who do you choose to be with these parts of yourself? And that's where the relationship with yourself comes in. So it's who you choose to be. Well, I choose to befriend myself. I choose to take great care of myself. I see this pattern in behavior getting in the way of my relationships or what's important to me or the stuff I would really love to be fulfilled on. Well, then I'd like to take it on to the best of my ability. And I'm going to meet myself right where I am with the best of my ability. And the best of my ability is not perfect. And there's going to be gaps in my ability. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm going to bring patience, understanding, and kindness and care to my growth and to my learning. And you know what? I'm going to celebrate my wins and I'm going to lick my wounds for the losses, but I'm going to be here with myself and I'm going to take it in and I'm going to be with it. So that's really one of the biggest reasons why tending and cultivating a fantastic relationship with yourself matters, because it does allow you to hold yourself through the not so great parts and the harder times when you're with yourself. So I'll leave it there as just another reason of why tending a fantastic relationship with yourself matters. That's it for now, and I'll see you again. Bye.